Hey, what's up guys? It's Lucas. This is my wife Heather. And I have had many requests to do a video talking about how to set up a guitar. Specifically in this case we're talking about like a Gibson or Epiphone type stop tail guitar. And so I thought I would make a video on how to do that, and that's going to be things like action. And intonation and neck relief and stuff like that. So the reason that I have Heather here, besides the fact that she's beautiful and I love to have her on camera, and you guys definitely click my videos more when she's in it, is also because I think Heather is going to do a good job of keeping me from getting too rambly about it, and she might also be able to ask a question that I wouldn't think to ask because I've been doing this stuff for 17 years. But she doesn't do it, so she might think to ask the question.
So Lucas, what's a setup?
I asked for that one. This video brought to you in part by this beautiful Pioneer Woman mug. We're not sponsored by Pioneer Woman, but we sure would like to be because this stuff is so cute. I'm a man and I'm not afraid to admit that this cup is freaking precious.
And I'm married to him. So what exactly does a setup entail?
That's a good question. It's different for everyone, but for me, a setup means I'm concerned about two things. And that's going to be playability and functionality. Playability, so how good does it feel to play the guitar when you pick it up? Do you feel like you have to fight it, or is it easy to play? That's playability. And then functionality, does it stay in tune? Does it work correctly? Does it have things that don't work the way they're supposed to when you're playing? Notes don't stay in tune up the neck, that kind of stuff. So playability, functionality, that is what a setup addresses. So now assuming that you don't have any other weird issues with the guitar, like frets are leveled and crowned correctly, the neck isn't twisted, you don't have any weird stuff happening, assuming all of that is fine, then the things that you do for a setup, or the things that I do for a setup, are I'm concerned about the action, the nut slots, both the depth and the width, the neck relief, and the intonation, or as I say it, intonation.
Freeze! This is a setup!
That doesn't make sense.
You know, like it's a stick up, but it's a setup.
I mean, okay, let me rephrase that. It's not that it doesn't make sense, it was just bad. That was like my worst dad joke bad.
Ow, just missed my finger! So exactly what is action?
Great question. So action refers to the distance between the bottom underside of the string and the top of the fret. So that little space, if you were to look down the side of the guitar neck, you'll see, I'll put up some video here. It's the distance between the top of the fret and the bottom of the string. That's your action. A higher action, typically harder to press down. A lower action, usually easier to press down, but if it gets too low, then you might get buzzing or fret out or that kind of thing.
So tell me about the slots in them nuts.
Okay, so good question as well. Nut slots, basically the nut slot is where your string contacts right before it goes to your tuners, your machine heads. So the string is going to make contact in two places. That's the nut slots and the bridge saddles. So the nut slots are important for two reasons. One, they determine how high the action, like we just talked about a second ago, how high the action is across the neck, but specifically really close to the end of the neck to where the nut is. And that's why, like, where you play your open cowboy chords and stuff, so you want a pretty low action there. And then the other thing is the width and the shape of the nuts determines how easily the string can pass back and forth through. So if it is too narrow, then the string will catch, and often you'll hear a little pinging sound when you're tuning. It'll go crank, 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 ping. That's your nut catching.
So tell me, how do you relieve the neck of a guitar?
Excellent question. So what is neck relief? Well, neck relief just means that there's a bow in the neck, rather, a concave rather than a convex. So if you were to we're looking at a guitar neck sideways here.
Science.
Yeah. Then the nut and the bridge are on this end. There should be a slight bow there, like this. If it's too straight, if it's perfectly straight, you're gonna get fret buzz. And if it's convex like this, you're definitely gonna get fret buzz and notes are gonna buzz out. So to put relief in a neck is to give more bow, and to take relief out of a neck is to straighten it. And so we use the truss rod to make that adjustment.
Good bow, bad bow. All right, so tell me about intonation.
Intonation means that, let's say you play the 3rd fret on the lowest string. That note is a G, and it rings true in tune. What you want to be able to do is play that same note at the 12th fret up position from that, so 15, I guess, And then if you play that note there and you get a perfect octave in tune, then that guitar is intonated correctly. But if it's a little sharp or a little flat, then you need to do something like adjust the saddles on the bridge to get the string to be intonated correctly. So that has to do with the guitar playing in tune with other people as you go on up the neck, but also in tune with itself, because if one string is not intonated correctly, then as you move up the neck, chord shapes are going to start to sound out of tune and bad. So now what I want to do is we're going to go back to action, nut slots, neck relief, intonation. But
it's like the Pepto-Bismol song.
Action, nut slots, neck relief, intonation, strap lock, hey, doing setups.
Well, I was just going to get real serious, like an infomercial and be like, diarrhea is a serious problem. I can't keep a straight face.
I know, the one...
1 in 2 adults has diarrhea.
The one...
Like one of those Dwight facts, you know?
False. All right, so now that I've explained what those things are, the reason I wanted to explain all of them before I tell you how we deal with it is because a setup is kind of a balancing act. All of these things have an effect on the other thing. So, you know, how you set your neck relief affects both your action and your intonation. Same thing with your nut slots. If they're a certain height or depth, then that's going to affect your action and therefore affect your intonation. So you kind of have to know that all of these things play together, and you're going to have to do a little bit of going back and forth and checking one and the other to get it just right. But it can be done.
Yeah, everything affects the nuts.
Action, nut slots, neck relief, intonation, hey! Okay, so now that I've explained what those things are and how they affect each other, let's talk about how I go about addressing each of these issues. So I'm going to start with action because that's kind of a across-the-board type thing.
You know how I like to address action?
How's that?
Hello, Mr. Action.
Pleased to meet you. So the first thing that I like to do when I adjust the action on the guitar is deal with the depth of the nut slots. And the easiest way I think to do this is to use a fret rocker, which is just a small straight edge, and then feeler gauges, like automotive feeler gauges. So what I do is I'm going to show you some video up on the screen here. I put a fret rocker on the frets closest to the nut, so this is going to be the first 3 frets. And then I leave a little bit of overhang so that I can slide feeler gauges in between the fretboard and that fret rocker, so that will tell me how tall the fret is, or at least pretty close. So what I want to do is get the height so that it sets perfectly level with that first fret. Once I get that, then I determine how tall I want the nut slot to be. So for me, usually that's like somewhere between 12 and 10 thousandths of an inch, and going across the nut from from top to bottom. So what I do is I use more feeler gauges on top of the height of the fret to act as a depth stop. So then once I've got that height selected, I slide it all the way up against the nut, and then I use nut files to go straight passes one direction so that you don't make funny shapes all the way down until I am right just about to hit the feeler gauge. And then once I'm right about to hit it, I go really, really slow until I just start to touch it, and that means that slot is now deep enough. Now, if you're using the correct size files, correct size and shape files, it's going to do all of the sort of tuning, sticking work for you, but I still recommend lubricating the nut with some kind of, what did you call it again?
Nut juice.
Nut juice, yes. I recommend lubricating your nut slots with nut juice so that your strings do not catch, particularly on Gibson and Epiphone type guitars. A lot of times they have strings that spread out to the left or right on hard angles, and that's not super great for tuning stability. So that's a good way to deal with it. So that's the first thing we're going to do, is do the nut slot depth and width. So the next thing I like to do is do the neck relief. And because again, this kind of, once you get your nut depth right, the neck relief is kind of a set thing. Once you get it feeling right, then you're good. So what I like to do is you can use a notch straight edge, which is a tool you can buy. I'll put an Amazon link or something.
Is it literally called a knot straight edge?
Notched straight edge. Yeah, and that is to say that it's a straight edge that has notches in it for where the frets are. So it will go on top of the fingerboard of your guitar, and it will tell you if your guitar has a perfectly straight neck. You'll be able to see there's no light in between it. That's assuming your fretboard's not weird or something. So you can do it that way. Often I do what I would call like the kind of cheating version of checking the neck relief, which is to say I will hold the string down at the lowest, like first fret with one finger, and then I'll reach over with my other hand and hold the string down on like the 14th or 15th fret. and then I'll tap the string down. I'm going to be showing you this on the screen while I'm doing it. But I'll tap the string down, and if there's a little bounce there, that means the neck is not perfectly straight because the string is acting as a straight edge. If the string has no bounce, then the neck is too straight. But if it has way too, like a lot of bounce, then you probably need to straighten it some. So that's the next thing. So once we figure out if we need to straighten it or put relief in it, then we adjust the truss rod accordingly. Since we're talking about a Gibson or Epiphone style guitar here, the truss rod is going to most likely be up at the top of the headstock. And it's either going to be like a 5/16 acorn nut, which Gibson tends to do, or it might be something like an Allen key or a hex key that's like maybe 4 or 5 millimeters for an Epiphone. And so what you want to do is, if you're holding the guitar in the playing position, if you want to straighten the neck or remove relief, you would crank that wrench toward you. And if you want to add relief, then you would push the wrench away from you. And so once we get our neck relief set correctly, then we're going to move on to the next step, which is going to be intonation. I know that sounds like a lot, but like it'll make more sense when you see it with the footage.
I mean, you didn't even give me a breath to make an acorn joke. Jeez.
So I was laughing at my own big. I didn't mean to inhale so strongly.
Shepherd at the end of Mass Effect.
Oh, hey, I think the Mass Effect remaster has been set. The leaked date is like February 23rd or something. I know, I was like, I need it bad in my life.
Oh, we have a guest.
No.
Mama, I heard you loud.
Oh, yeah.
I heard you yell.
Are we being too loud?
Oh, okay. We'll quiet down.
You just need Mama to be quiet so you can watch your TV.
Well, why are you yelling?
Oh, we're just having fun.
Yeah, she just yells at Daddy sometimes.
Because I love it.
Be quiet!
Oh.
So you adjust the intonation by moving the bridge saddle one way or another depending on how the string reads. So first of all, I'll show it to you in this video clip with the guitar on the bench. However, when you're actually adjusting the intonation, I recommend that you do it in the playing position. And the reason for that is that when you have a guitar on its back, gravity will put a natural little bit of strain on the neck and it'll pull it just a little bit, and that will adjust the intonation, and you can't really compensate for that. So if you're trying to get really accurate, I would do it in the playing position. And I would recommend having your pickups as far away from the strings, lower down as you can, because the magnetic field of the pickups will actually interfere with the string vibration. So keep that in mind. So this is one that I have had to look up for years until I finally memorized it. If you check your intonation by hitting a 12th fret harmonic and then playing that same note fretted on the 12th fret, if the note is sharp when you play it down, that means you need to move the bridge saddle away from the nut. If it's flat, then you need to move it towards the nut. So sharp, away, flat, towards. Sharp, away, flat, towards. I'm telling you, it took me like 15 years to learn that. It's a pain in the butt. But that's how you make the adjustment. And each time you adjust it, you're gonna need to detune the string a little bit, take it off the saddle, move the saddle, put it back, retune the string. So it takes a few minutes, you just have to be patient. But once you get it set right, it's the most satisfying thing in the world to be able to play an E chord down low and then play that exact same shape up 12 frets and it ring perfectly in tune. So do it. Take the time and do it. So after you've done all these adjustments, and remember, as I said, you might have to kind of make a little adjustment with something else as you go back and forth. So as you're working, you may find that you need to straighten the neck or put a little relief in it or something like that. And then when you do that, you might have to adjust the intonation a little bit. You have to do it little steps at a time. Once you get all that done, you should have your guitar in the sort of peak performance version of itself.
But wait, there's more.
There is more. I'm going to give you a bonus one. So I like to put strap locks on my guitars, and this is something
dangerous.
Yeah, because I don't like my guitars to have broken headstocks. The first thing that you're going to want to do is remove the original strap button, which you can do with a screwdriver or a drill with a screwdriver bit in the end of it. Just be careful. And once you remove it, then you're going to need to put the replacement or the strap lock button on the guitar. I use Dunlops, but there's a million different kinds, Schaller and all that stuff. They all work pretty similar. So what you're going to see that the screw that goes in where the original one was is probably both wider in diameter and probably longer as well. So what you need to do is re-drill that hole so that it is the correct size for the screw. If you don't, you're going to try to crank it down in there and you're gonna strip out the head of the screw. And I've seen this happen so many times. And once you do that, especially with Dunlops where it has to go way down inside of the lock, it is the biggest pain in the butt to get that out of the guitar. You just about have to cut it in half with a Dremel or something to be able to back it back out, so don't do that. Look at the screw, like you're looking down the screw this way. I'll show you in the camera. When you see the screw, don't look at the threads, look at the inner diameter of the screw itself. When you see that, you want to find a drill bit that's that size. That's the size of the inner diameter, not the threads.
The taming of the screw.
Once you've found the correct size, then you need to figure out how deep the screw needs to go in. So what I do is I hold up the strap lock with the screw all the way down in it so that I can see how far it needs to go, and then I take my drill bit and put it next to it, and then I get the length the same, and I put a little piece of like paint tape or masking tape at the line where I need to stop. And that way, when I start to drill in, I know when I get right to where that tape is, that's where I need to stop. It doesn't need to go any deeper than that. So once you do that, you screw it back down, strap lock, super stable, not gonna come out, easy peasy.
Lemon squeezy.
For a basic Gibson Epiphone style guitar, that's all you need to know to be able to do your own setups. And I highly recommend that you learn how to do this stuff. You might be in a pinch where you've got to go play a show or something and it's 7 o'clock at night and nobody's open, and you need to be able to make these adjustments yourself. And it's really not super difficult to do. Okay, well, I hope you all have enjoyed this video and found it informative and maybe a little bit cheeky and funny, because Heather's here for entertainment purposes, you know. By all means, click like, subscribe, ring the bell, all that kind of stuff. We appreciate it. If you really liked what we did, you can go down to the description. You can buy us a coffee. We appreciate that, because I'll put it in this glorious mug by Pioneer Woman, who we are not sponsored by, but would like to be sponsored by. We got all your stuff, Pioneer Woman. We like it.